Harvard's initial response was to form a biotech company of its own, with plenty of venture capital and the intellectual capital of two of the university's star molecular biologists, Mark Potashny and Tom Maniatis. The business plan seemed a sure thing. A major player was about to enter the biotech game. In the fall of 1980, however, the plan fell apart. When the measure was put to a vote, the faculty refused to allow fair Harvard to dip its lily-white academic toes into the murky waters of commerce. There were concerns that the enterprise would create conflicts of interest within the biology department. With a profit center in place, would faculty continue to be hired strictly on the basis of academic merit? Or would their potential to contribute to the firm now come into consideration? Ultimately, Harvard was forced to withdraw, giving up its 20% stake in the company. 16 years later, the cost of that call would become apparent when the firm was sold to the pharmaceutical giant Wyeth for $1.25 billion. And to this day, Harvard's Department of Molecular and Cellular Biology lacks a designated endowment to support research above the cost of salaries. The decision of Potashny and Maniatis to press on regardless precipitated a fresh set of obstacles. Mayor Vellucci's moratorium on recombinant DNA research in Cambridge was a thing of the past, but anti-DNA sentiment lingered on. Carefully avoiding a flashy high-tech name like Genentech or Biogen, Potashny and Maniatis named their company Genetics Institute, hoping to evoke the less threatening fruit fly era of biology rather than the brave new world of DNA. In the same spirit, the fledgling company decided to hang its shingle not in Cambridge but in the neighboring city of Somerville. A stormy hearing in Somerville City Hall, however, demonstrated that the Vellucci effect extended beyond the Cambridge city limits. Genetics Institute was denied a license to operate. Fortunately, the city of Boston, just across the Charles River from Cambridge, proved more receptive, and the new firm set up shop in an empty hospital building in Boston's Mission Hill district. As it became more and more apparent that recombinant methods posed no health or environmental risk, the Vellucci brand of anti-biotech fanaticism could not endure. Within a few years, Genetics Institute would move to North Cambridge, just down the road from the university parent that had abandoned it at birth. Over the past 20 years, the suspicion and sanctimoniousness attending the early days of the relationship between academic and commercial molecular biology has given way to something approaching a productive symbiosis. For their part, universities now actively encourage their faculty to cultivate commercial interests. Learning from Harvard's mistake with Genetics Institute, they have developed ways to cash in on the lucrative applications of technology invented on campus. New codes of practice aim to prevent conflicts of interest for professors straddling both worlds. In the early days of biotech, academic scientists were all too often accused of selling out when they became involved with a company. Now, involvement in commercial biotech is a standard part of a hotshot DNA career. The money is handy, and there are intellectual rewards as well, because, for good business reasons, biotech is invariably on the scientific cutting edge. Stanley Cohen proved himself a forerunner, not only in technology but also in the evolution from a purely academic mindset to one adapted to the age of big bucks biology. He had known from the beginning that recombinant DNA had potential for commercial applications, but it had never occurred to him that the Cohen-Boyer cloning method should be patented. It was Niels Reimers in Stanford's technology licensing office who suggested that a patent might be in order when he read on the front page of the New York Times about the home team's big win. At first, Cohen was dubious. The breakthrough in question, he argued, was dependent on generations of earlier research that had been freely shared, and so it seemed inappropriate to patent what was merely the latest development. But every invention builds on ones that have come before. The steam locomotive could only come after the steam engine, and patents rightly belong to those innovators who extend the achievements of the past in decisive and influential ways. In 1980, 6 years after Stanford first submitted the application, the Cohen-Boyer process was granted its patent. In principle, the patenting of methods could stifle innovation by restricting the application of important technologies. But Stanford handled the matter wisely, and there were no such negative consequences. Cohen and Boyer and their institutions were rewarded for their commercially significant contribution, but not at the expense of academic progress. In the first place, the patent ensured that only corporate entities would be charged for use of the technology. Academic researchers could use it free of charge. Second, Stanford resisted the temptation to impose a very high licensing fee, which would have prevented all but the wealthiest companies and institutions from using recombinant DNA. For a relatively modest $10,000 a year, with a maximum 3% royalty on the sales of products based on the technology, the Cohen-Boyer method was available to anyone who wanted to use it. This strategy, good for science, proved to be good for business as well. The patent has contributed some $250 million to the coffers of UCSF and Stanford. And both Boyer and Cohen generously donated part of their shares of the proceeds to their universities. It was only a matter of time before organisms genetically altered by technology would themselves be patented. The test case had, in fact, originated in 1972. It involved a bacterium that had been modified using not recombinant DNA technology, but traditional genetic methods. The implications for the biotech business were clear nevertheless. If bacteria modified with conventional techniques were patentable, then those modified by the new recombinant methods would be too. In 1972, Ananda Chakrabarty, a research scientist at General Electric, applied for a patent on a Pseudomonas bacteria strain he had developed as an all-in-one oil slick degrader. Before this, the most efficient way to break down an oil spill was to use a number of different bacteria, each of which degraded a different component of the oil. By combining different plasmids, each coding for a different degradation pathway, he managed to produce a super-degrader strain of Pseudomonas. Chakrabarty's initial patent application was turned down, but after wending its way through the legal system for 8 years, it was finally granted in 1980, when the Supreme Court ruled 5-4 in his favor, concluding that a live human microorganism is patentable subject matter, if, as in this case, it is the result of human ingenuity and